So, Timna, I want to ask you a question about copper, since Pippa was just doing a great job talking about copper production here in the U.S. I'm looking at the charts right here. Copper's down about 1% week to date, while we see the equity markets kind of boom on the idea that we're going to continue to see economic strength with a temporary tariff reduction between the U.S. and China. Why this reaction from copper?
Well, copper is U.S. is less than 10% of total copper demand. So copper is still really a story about China. China has so much of the world's demand and also a vast majority of the smelters. So I think it's really more a function of how the market is feeling about copper. Copper year to date is up. And the biggest story this year has not been the LME price of copper, but the distinction between the U.S. CME price and the LME price. So actually, if you look at the CME price, you would see a bigger spike.
All right, very interesting. I'm looking at the LME price as well, so seeing a bit of a disparity that you're mentioning. One of the big stories when we're talking about metals are the tariffs from the president on steel and aluminum. Kind of have a similar question for you. I'm looking at aluminum prices since the tariffs were announced, down more than 5%. Steel prices only up about 2%. Seems like kind of muted moves. Now, in all fairness, the president signaled the tariffs ahead of time, so maybe there was some price action before they were officially announced. But why are we seeing such muted moves and downside moves when it comes to steel and aluminum?
I think if you look at the price for steel and aluminum from before when the tariffs were telegraphed, you'd see quite a different story. The bigger phenomenon, so aluminum, the price that you're looking at in aluminum is the global aluminum market. And again, the U.S. aluminum, amount is less than 10%. It comprises of the total world. So what you really want to look at is a Midwest premium, which is basically the premium that you have to pay to bring product to the U.S. The U.S. is about similar to copper, about short 50% of its aluminum needs. So it also needs that higher premium. And that's actually spiked. It hasn't gone up as much as you would expect, just as the CME hasn't, because there was warehousing in advance of the announcement. So once that warehoused metal gets depleted, one would expect the price, because the tariff could continue to rise. Similarly, in the price of steel, it has actually skyrocketed about 50% from peak to trough from the beginning of the year, and it's now started to roll over. So it's now digesting, I think, the impact of the tariffs and pulling back a bit.
By the way, Timna, we love when people straighten us out and tell us which tickers to look at and what things to look at. So we're going to take your advice going forward. I want to get to the stocks in this space and your top picks. One of them is actually a company we had on here, Century Aluminum. Just talk us through very quickly your top picks in the space.
Well, Century Aluminum has always been a high-cost producer and a small-cap name that isn't that well followed. But what's fascinating about them is that historically, they'd had a kind of challenged balance sheet. They'd had, spotty track record. They were subject to the price of alumina spiking when Russia invaded Ukraine. It hit them hard. And, power prices would spike. But in the last couple quarters, they've really gotten all that under control. So that's one part of the thesis we like. They are the biggest name exposed to U.S. tariffs of our coverage, with about 50% of their production in the U.S. So they are big beneficiaries of that Midwest premium spike that I was talking about. And then finally, of the three major catalysts that we have for Century, they have a location that could be actually spun off to be sold to a data center. So it's a lot of positives for a name that's kind of small and not that well looked at.